Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. I have two words for you. Hap Chapman. So ends the 2020 season for the New York Yankees, ends in bitter disappointment at the hands of the Tampa Bay Rays, a team that the Yankees couldn't figure out the entire season. Even though the Yankees were bested by the Rays 8 out of 10 games during the regular season, you still figured with everyone back and everyone healthy and the way the Yankees steamrolled over the Cleveland Indians in the wild card round that they'll at least be able to get by Tampa. You figured, all right, maybe at most we'll go 4 games, maybe 5 games, but to go to 5 games and to lose it in the way it did, really big disappointment. And it's just this Yankee team where it's just like you always feel like you got this great roster, you got a good offense, starting pitch not there, great bullpen, and they just can't get over the hump. A couple of past years it's been at the hands of the Houston Astros, can't get over the hump in a big deciding game, and now it turns out to be Game 5 against Tampa. So we'll get into the whole series. We'll break down each of the game individually, kind of get into some of the big key moments, the momentum shifts, and there were quite a lot. But before we do get into that, we do have to mention the passing of Whitey Ford at the age of 91. Again, 2020, we've been losing a lot of people. Just this insane season. At the start of the season, obviously losing Hank Steinbrenner, of course, with the Yankees. I put a tribute to that on the shoulder the entire season, but now also losing Whitey Ford, in which in Game 5 the Yankees had a number 16 on the sleeve. You figure maybe a little Yankee magic, something great would happen, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. And really just to get into Whitey Ford for a moment, really the last of the kind of the golden age, golden Yankee legends. I mean, losing Yogi Berra, of course, losing Mickey Mantle and Billy Martin, and that whole unit. Whitey Ford was really the last one, and now with him gone, that whole sort of 50s and 60s Yankees are pretty much now. I mean, all those guys are pretty much gone now, and now you look almost to like the 70s Yankees as now sort of the legends. But Whitey, of course, probably the greatest the greatest Yankee pitcher of all time, at least starting pitcher wise. Bunch of rings, bunch of World Series, great moments, and again, really the last of that linkage to like the Mickey Mantle golden era Yankees. So we're going to break down each of these games, as I said. So first we'll get into Game 1. Now, again, the Yankees came in steamrolling in this, and they absolutely, torched the Cleveland Indians, their pitching, beating up Shane Bieber as well as Carrasco. Again, Bieber probably going to win the Cy Young Award. But the offense was really clicking, and again, you really felt good coming into this series. And Game 1 for the Yankees, obviously they threw out their the ace, Garrett Cole, which you expect they would, going up against Blake Snell, Mr. who kind of questioned, should we even play this season if we're not going to get paid in full? And the Yankee offense pretty much worked Snell early. He wasn't particularly sharp, and Cole was pretty much running along, but game basically it was a little bit of seesaw back and forth with home runs. At one point, Cole's just gave up a solo home run to Randy Arozarena, who torched the Yankees this entire series, as well as a 2-run shot to Troy, who basically he owns Cole. And even though the Yankees did fall behind 3-2, right away the next inning you get a home run from Higashioka as well as from Judge. The Yankees take a 4-3 lead, and then from there, even though the Yankees had this 1-run lead, you really just felt the Yankees were kind of in control the whole way. Cole really settled down, gave the Yankees 6 innings. Now, he only threw about 96 pitches in that range, and again, with the thought in mind that, hey, if this goes to a Game 5, you're going to have to bring Cole back on short rest. So, I think it was the right move. Boone didn't want to extend him further. Again, you probably could have thrown him out there for another inning because, again, he was kind of dealing. And his last inning, he was throwing 99, 100. So he actually looked like he got better as the game went along. But again, knowing that you would need Cole for a possible, Game 5 that Friday, Boone decided, all right, let's just, give him 6 innings. And then the Yankee offense, eventually tacked on some runs. You got a grand slam from Giancarlo Stanton, who, at that point had hit a home run in 3 postseason games in a row. He would actually extend that for 2 more games, and we'll get into that. And the Yankees would eventually, get to a point where they had a 9-3 lead. Again, you felt very comfortable. They didn't have to use Chapman. They were able to have Luis Cessa come out for the 9th inning. And again, a great start. You figure, all right, great, our offense is clicking. You got Cole out there. Again, pitches not a great game, but a good enough game to get the win. And now you figure, all right, great, 1 game down. We need 2 more wins. So now you go into Game 2, and this is really where and we'll get into it, where the momentum really shifted. And I think this is where the Yankees really dropped the ball and gave the momentum right back to Tampa. Game 2. And this is where the Yankees blew it for the whole series. Again, this move made no sense. So originally they had David Garcia penciled in as a starter, which, first you scratch your head a little bit and say, all right, overall, was decent in the handful of starts he had for the Yankees. They're one of their touted prospects, but, only 21 years old. You figure, can he handle the pressure, the situation? Has a calm, cool demeanor about him. You figure he would. So again, I was a little surprised they announced him as the Game 2 starter, but again, wasn't particularly shocked. But of course, this was all going to be a ploy, which some people threw out there, that the Yankees were going to do. So the whole idea is that they're going to have David Garcia be the starter. He's a right-hander. And in that case, you figure, all right, well, Tampa is now going to stack up their lineup with lefties. And then what you do is that one inning later, instead of, let him throw a full, 5 or 6 innings to get a starter, you bring in another starter, the left-hander Jay Happ, who just, we'll get into that all in a moment there. And what you now have to do is, well, now if you're the Tampa Bay manager, you kind of shot yourself in the foot, because now you've loaded up your lineup with a bunch of lefties, and now the other team's going to bring their lefty out, which combat your lefties, in which you figure the pitcher would have the advantage, and then you're not going to go to your bench that early in the game. So a lot of managers like to do this. They steal, feel like we're going to steal a few innings of you being forced to stick with your lefty lineup. So this was the Yankees' grand plan, and I just think it just made no sense. A couple of reasons. Number one, you look at David Garcia. Okay, first of all, Tampa hadn't seen him the whole season. As I mentioned before, he did pitch relatively well, except that one start up at Fenway. He got knocked around a little bit, but overall, it was pretty good for the Yankees. So if Tampa never seen him before, why not just throw him out there, a normal start, 4 or 5 innings, whatever. And if he struggles in the third, all right, then you could go to Happ or somebody else. But to pull him after 1 inning made entirely no sense. Now in the first inning, he did struggle. Gave up a home run to Arizarena, which again, he killed the entire Yankee staff. So why, what's the difference? But he battled that and he got out of it. And again, I think they should let him ride. You could have rode him out for a couple of innings just to see if, what you would get out of him, instead of bringing in Jay Happ, which, all right, look, he has a lot of experience. He's older, but it's Jay Happ. It's like, he's like a number 4 starter at best. He's not like a secret weapon. There's nothing great about him. And Tampa's seen him a million times, from his couple of years with the Yankees now, plus, when he was with the Blue Jays. It seems like he's been in the AL East, for a long time now. Jay Happ isn't fooling anybody. So if this was like your secret weapon, really made no sense. I don't know why they went in this direction. And, this is obviously an organizational, you could say, well, why'd Boone do this? This is a Cashman decision. Obviously, something like this, you pre-plan ahead. Cashman and Boone were definitely in cahoots on this. And, Happ wasn't any good at all. Gives up 2 2-run homers. The Yankees, fall behind 5-1 at one point. And again, it's just like, why do you do this? You might as well just go with David Garcia. You probably, we don't know what would happen afterwards. But, you can only speculate. But just to go with Jay Happ, it was such a downer. And, once Happ came out, to warm up in the second inning, Tampa's batters must have been licking their chops, just to see, oh my God, they're bringing him out. And, it just totally shifted the momentum. And, opposing the Yankees was the great right-hander, Tyler Glasnow, who was sharp. The Yankees couldn't touch him during the regular season. Definitely could have, lay a hand on him in Game 2. Minus now you get a 3-run home run from Stanton like that, which brought the Yankees at 5-4. And you say, hey, all right, great, we're fighting back a little bit. But the Yankee bullpen, they didn't bring in their high leverage guys. So you had Ottavino as well as Loaiza give a couple of runs. The Yankees then fall behind 8-5. And the Yankees rallied a little bit against Fairbanks. Had put some runners on late. And, he was sitting on the mound there, and his eyes were bulging out, and it looks like he was about to cough the game up. But he composed himself, got out a couple of jams, and the Yankees, weren't able to complete a comeback, and lose Game 2. And again, the Yankees had some fight with them. We felt, all right, well, they lost the game, but at least have some fight in them, and you maybe could carry the momentum Game 3. But really, the start of the game, the Yankees really just put themselves in a major hole. Again, made no sense of starting Happ in that second inning, play these little, these little games, Look, Tampa has to do this stuff because they have like a $30 million payroll. So yeah, they got to be creative. They have to have like a bullpen game, or they got to play little shenanigans like that. The Yankees, they shouldn't even bother with that. They should, they just say, hey, look, we're the Yankees. We're going to throw our starter out there, and whatever he got, he got. They took that approach. It would have been probably a totally different story for Game 2. But instead, They kind of just threw the game away by just putting Happ out there. And again, he had nothing. Gives up two two-run homers, puts the Yankees in the hole. And again, you get yet another home run from Stanton, which at this point now is 4 consecutive postseason games. Again, all right, you're feeling good about yourself a little bit. But from that point on, Glasnow was just lights out. Throwing BBs, getting a lot of low strikes. And I'll get into that in a moment with the umpire. I mean, CB Buckner was just absolutely awful. In terms of balls and strikes. I never want to be one of the people that complain about the umpires. I mean, just keep it about the players on the field. But really got to emphasize the umpiring, especially Game 2. The strike zone was absolutely horrible. I mean, you get the little box you see on TV, and I understand, look, you look at the box on TV, it's not the same when you're actually there physically because the ball moves and you get dips and you have depth and all that stuff. But basically, Tampa was getting every low strike. I mean, literally, the ball would be like under the yellow box and it was a strike. And the Yankees were not getting those calls. So the Yankees were pretty much helpless. And when you have tall players like a Judge or something like that, he can't even get to the ball down there. He's pretty much dead meat. And Tampa was able to take advantage of that. And even for the Yankees, there was one pitch, Happ threw on one of the Tampa batters. I mean, the ball was literally up to the guy's chest, and he got caught and called it a strike. Even Happ was like, wow, I got a strike out of that? So the strike zone for Game 2 was horrible. Probably one of the worst I've ever seen. And CB Buckner, again, just one of the worst umpires out there. I don't know how he still has a job, but whatever. But really, don't blame the umpires. I understand that, but it did have an effect because, again, you're up there, whether you're ahead 2-0 or behind 0-2, it makes a world of difference. And not saying, a different umpire would lead to a different outcome, but it is worth pointing out that the strike zone for Game 2 was absolutely horrible. But the Yankees have no one else to blame but themselves. Again, not letting David Garcia just pitch the whole game normally, instead of bringing out, sitting him down early after only giving up one run, which is a home run to a guy who, again, he's been lighting up the entire Yankee pitching staff. So it doesn't, why single out Garcia for that? Instead, they could bring in Happ. Pitchers, they throw the game away. You're bummed out, but again, the Yankees did have a little fight. They did come back a little bit later in the game, so you figure, all right, you know what? They lost the game, but they still have some fight. Now you go into Game 3 with Tanaka, and then you say, all right, maybe we can capture back the momentum. So this brings us to Game 3 with old reliable Tanaka on the mound, opposed by Charlie Morton, of course, a nemesis from the old Houston Astros days. And with this, you felt good. The Yankees were now the home team. And of course, now the Yankees playing in the San Diego bubble, so to speak. Again, Games 1 and 2, they were considered the road team in the Grays, where then Games 3 and 4, they would be the home team, and then Game 5, of course, necessarily, they would go back to being the road team. Really doesn't matter because you're playing in San Diego, so really no one has a clear advantage. But of course, the advantage is you want to be the home team in terms of just having that bottom of the ninth or bottom of whatever extra inning to get a walk-off win. But so you have Tanaka on the mound, who again, postseason for the Yankees, always been money. Again, the thing on him is his regular season is usually up and down, but you can always rely on him on the postseason. Unfortunately, it wasn't the case for Game 3. But before we can get into that, a real telling sign is that they went with Higgy behind the dish instead of Sanchez. Of course, Higgy is Garrett Cole's personal valet catcher, so you expect that for Game 1 and then Game 5 later on. But for Game 2, they started Sanchez, which you kind of expect, go back to normal. But for Game 3, instead of keeping Sanchez in there, they went with Higgy again. Now, that was a real telling sign, and I'll get into that a little later. But they go Higgy behind the mound, and Tanaka, held his own for a couple of innings, but unfortunately then gives up a 3-run home run to Kiermaier. In the fourth, the Yankees fall behind 4-1. And the Yankees bats never really got going with this. Again, all that momentum they had, leaving the Cleveland series into Game 1, that went right out the window with Game 2 with the whole Garcia Happ flip-flop, which, I explained that ad nauseum. And really, the Yankees never recovered there offensively. And, at some point would fall behind in this game 8-2. Again, Chad Green came out, gave up a home run, wasn't sharp as well as Luis Sessa. And Yankees really dug themselves in a hole, down 8-2 at one point. Again, Stanton now hit yet another home run. This time, this was like the 5th home run, a postseason game in a row, hitting a home run. It's great. Made it 8-4. Okay, it doesn't look as bad. But really, the Yankees were never in this game. Never gave you a point where, wow, they're going to rally and come back on like that. And it was completely dead. And, it's really, they just never recovered from Game 2. So now the Yankees were in a 2-1 hole. You're like, wow, how's this even happening, Just a week ago, they're on top of the world. You felt great. The offense was clicking. Now they have to force where you have to basically win and go home moving forward, going into Game 4. So Game 4. So now the Yankees are fighting for survival and have to go to Jordan Montgomery, opposed by Ryan Yarborough for the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, A couple of telling signs with this one. I mean, and we'll kind of break it down. The fact they have to go to Montgomery, who hadn't pitched in almost like 2 weeks beforehand, really show you, the state of the Yankee starting rotation. And, even with the game 2 shenanigans with Happ and Garcia, again, this shows that, after Cole, really, Yankee starting pitching was just not up to snuff at all. Again, teams like Tampa, who are, conditioned of having small payrolls and pulling tricks, they can maybe, wean through those situations. New York Yankees really can't. And Montgomery, to his credit, pitched well, gave him 4 innings, only gave him 1 run, and got out a couple of big jams, including a couple of bases loaded situations, gave the Yankees as much as they could handle. Luckily this time for Chad Green, you actually got the good Chad Green in Game 4 versus the Chad Green from Game 3. Green was fine. Eventually, Gleyber Torres will chip in with a 2-run home run, extending the Yankee lead from 2-1 to 4-1. Now you're feeling a little good about the Cells. The Yankees take another run in, take a 5-1 lead, have to bring Chapman out and have him close the game because he hadn't pitched like over a week. So you want to get him some work in. And you figure maybe if the Yankees could add on a few runs, maybe you could pull Chapman out of there. But Chapman got some work in, didn't really labor. And now you figure, all right, the Yankees tied the series up 2-2. It was a tough Game 4, battled through it. And now you figure, all right, now you're going into Game 5 with your ace Cole on the mound. You're feeling good about yourself. So you figure, all right, you know what? Tampa took a few games. We didn't expect this to happen. But really, if you just look at the Yankee offense, again, you're minus the 2-run home run by Gleyber Torres, and of course, Luke Voit hit a solo home run early on. Really, you don't see like the Yankee offense still wasn't clicking. Great, you hit a couple of home runs, that's good. 1 swing of the bat, but you don't feel that the offense wasn't fluid and flowing the way it was in the Cleveland series or in Game 1 of this series. So even though you're happy you survived 1 game, you could take it to a Game 5, but you knew danger could be around the corner. So the Game 5 showdown, all the money on the line, all the chips on the table, whatever phrase you want to use. So you had Garrett Cole for the Yankees on short rest. Now, in his entire career, he never did 3 days rest on the start, so this was new territory for him. And opposed him was Tyler Glasnow, who pretty much pitched Game 2 and was very tough on the Yankees. Now, obviously, he was only on 2 days rest, so you figure he couldn't go that far, and it was just going to be a bullpen game. And really, everyone was just going to throw the kitchen sink at each other because, this is Game 5, you got to survive. And Cole, for his part, was rather good. Gave the Yankees, 5 1/3 of inning, which you kind of expect from him. Just gave up a home run to Audrey Meadows. Now, he almost gave up yet another home run to Randy Arozarena, who, again, he torched all the Yankee pitching for the entire series, but luckily Gaunt was able to make a great play, kept the score at 1-1. But the problem really is that the Yankee offense, again, wasn't showing up, wasn't there, and they couldn't do anything against Glasnow, and pretty much couldn't do anything against the rest of the bullpen the rest of the way. And again, this was the Yankees' Achilles heel. In a big game, we need the offense to step up. They did not step up, and Tampa's pitching just pretty much shut down the Yankees. And a couple of questionable moves in this one. Now, they had to bring in Britton earlier, probably than they wanted to. Had to bring him in the 6th, which means now he can only go so many innings where you have to bring in Chapman earlier than you wanted to. And the problem with Chad Green, well, they used him up in Games 3 and 4, and he's one of Boone's high leverage guys. So pretty much it just left to you're going to need Britton and Chapman somehow to get you 4 innings worth of outs. And right there, you're starting behind the 8 ball. So they take out Cole early, which you can kind of understand. Again, he just gave up a home run to Audrey Meadows, almost gave up a second home run to Arozarena. So I figure he's tying a little bit. He's around 90 pitches. He never pitched on 3 days rest before, and plus he invested $320 million in the guy. You don't want to do anything to his arm. So I felt they did take him out at the right time. Britton, maybe they could have let him in for 1 more batter, but they took Britton out in the 7th, where now you're asking Chapman to basically get 7 outs, something he's not really accustomed to. So again, right there, you just knew the Yankees. It was bad news for the Yankees. Troubles around the corner again because this offense wasn't clicking. And now you got to, even though it was 1-1, the score was tied 1-1 at the time when they brought Chapman in. But it's just like, all right, you just got to hope some of the Yankees maybe put a few runs on in the 8th and 9th, and then because if this game's going to extra innings, the Yankees are dead meat. And in terms of high leverage guys, this is really where the Tommy Kahnle, losing for the year really hurt the Yankees because there were only 3 guys that seemed like Boone trusted in the high leverage spot. There was Chad Green, Zach Britton, and Chapman. That's it. And the Yankees weren't going to go with anyone else in this sort of pressure situation and really put them at a disadvantage. especially when you try to take Britton out in the 7th inning. Now you're asking Chapman to really do the impossible. The fact that he also pitched the night before. Now again, his arm should have been well rested because he almost had like a week off between Game 2 of the wild card series, and then by the time he pitched in Game 4 of the divisional round. But it was a lot to ask, and he knew it was doom and gloom. Now another telling sign is that later on in the game, when Higgy's spot came up to hit, now instead of going right to Gary Sanchez, which you would think they would do, because well, he's going to replace him defensively anyway, so just give him the at bat. Of course, he's always even though Kyle, he handled the bat pretty well, did hit a home run in Game 1, and he's no chump up there. He does pop a home run once in a while. He does make good contact on the ball, but they figure let's pull him out, and you figure all right, well just then pinch hit Gary Sanchez in the 8th straight up because he's going to play the defense anyway. Instead, they go with Mike Ford, who hadn't had a hit up to that point since August. All right. He was out for a while, injured, did not really have a great season. Again, he had a good 2019 season for the Yankees, not the greatest 2020 season, even though, again, it was a shortened season, and he was hurt for a while a little bit, so can't blame him on that. But you have it's the 8th inning of a playoff game, and you have an opportunity, for a pinch hitter there, and you go with, again, Mike Ford, again, who hadn't had a hit since August, over Gary Sanchez. So I think the really, I know, get into this a little later, the fall from grace for Gary Sanchez really was front and center on this one. The fact they wouldn't even, let him get a hit in that spot, that really tells you a lot. They rather go with a guy who hadn't had a hit since August over Gary Sanchez, who, at least he bopped a home run, at least in the divisional series. I mean, made some, at least he was active. I mean, Mike Ford was just sitting around for weeks and weeks and weeks on the bench doing nothing. But yet that's who they wanted to go in a big pitch hit situation, and he ends up striking out anyway. So really telling sign, and we'll get into this afterwards again, where they go in the offseason in terms of Gary Sanchez. But of course, Game 5, and I gotta say, look, it was a classic, and the showdown came, of course, in the bottom of the 8th. Chapman versus Mike Brousseau, who, a couple weeks beforehand at Yankee Stadium game, Chapman threw like 101 right near his head and a little beanball war back and forth, which at the time was not necessary at all because, Tanaka delivered the revenge. He did bean one of their guys in return, and that was supposed to squash the whole thing. But no, in the 9th inning, of course, even though it's a game still on the line, Chapman buzzes one by his head. Didn't make any sense. Again, both benches kind of, got jawing at each other. Kevin Cash, the Rays manager, kind of called out Boone on it. Wasn't a good look for Chapman, and of course this bat was the ultimate showdown and the ultimate revenge for Brousseau. Now he fell behind early 0-2, and you figure, all right, well, Chapman will just blow him away, but no, he kept fouling off pitches, kept battling. One of Chapman's sliders, Brousseau put some good wood on it, just, you pulled it too hard and went in the upper deck, but you're starting to get a little nervous, like he's not putting this guy away, and this guy keeps making good contact. Well, on a 3-2 pitch eventually, boom, Chapman serves one up, fly ball to left field, just goes over the wall, gives Tampa the 2-1 lead, and just, every Yankee fan's heart must just have sank. The players you saw in the face, they just sank. It was a real gut punch. And for Tampa, it's probably their signature moment, if you think about it. I mean, of course, yes, they've been to the World Series before, in 2008. They lost it. But that home run, that moment, was probably, in terms of their franchise, which again has only been around for about 20-something years, that was probably the signature moment for their franchise, getting a big home run in the playoffs in that spot against the New York Yankees, their bitter rival, the big brother, and all that stuff. So, I guess hats off for them. If you're a Rays fan, you must be ecstatic. If you're a Yankee fan, completely ejected. And you just saw it in the players' faces. Top of the 9th, the Yankee sent 3 batters up there, and it was just 1-2-3. I mean, Stanton, first of all, he starts off 2-0, great, and then again gets 2 low balls called strikes on him, and again he didn't even take the bat off his shoulder the entire series, and then boom, strike 3, a little two-seam fastball. It was a little inside, but still got enough to the plate where if you're in a 2-strike situation, you just got to swing the bat. He doesn't even swing the bat, so he just basically takes 5 pitches in the last 3 strikes, and he's gone 1-2-3. Voice strikes out, and again, Urshel at least put some good wood on it, but lines out to third, and boom, there goes the Yankee season, ended like a thud. And and you just saw the look, just the look on Stanton's face, from that first strikeout. You just knew they had no shot. There was no way they're going to rally. You maybe hold up a little hope, a little Yankee magic, stuff like that, but the Yankees are pretty much dead, dejected, and again, another end to the Yankee quest with this group that includes Judge and Gleyber and Sanchez, and you figure, all right, now we added Cole, and we're going to go to the World Series and win it. No, it ends in bitter disappointment the way it did last year and the year before and the year before that. Let's get into the actual takeaways, from the series. Weak starting pitching. Now, I know you look at the staff and say, well, we got Cole and at least Tanaka. The Yankees starting pitching staff was weak, and that's really one of the main points why the reason. That's why you have to play little, switcheroo games in Game 2 between Garcia and Happ, and that's why you have to go with someone like Jordan Montgomery, which, yeah, decent player, but for him to start a playoff game, a Game 4, and again, he hasn't pitched in like 2 weeks, it puts you in a bad spot. It's not comfortable there. Whatever reason, the Rays just owned the Yankees this season. Again, took 8 out of 10 during the regular season, and took 3 out of 5 during this divisional series. So, somebody could say, hey, look, you look at their roster, no one really jumps out at the page of you because, as Arena, again, a very good athlete. Choi, again, a very pesky hitter, but you look at that roster and no one really wows you outside a couple of the pitchers. But just for whatever reason, they just outplay the Yankees. They just make good contact. Again, none of them really, do anything extraordinary. They just make solid contact. They pitch well, and they just had the Yankees number this season. And sometimes that's just the way it is. The Yankees offense did not show up in this series. Now, yes, they put some runs on in Game 1, great, and of course you got a couple of home runs. You got 3 home runs in a row, Game 1, 2, and 3 from Stanton. But overall, the Yankee offense did not show up for this series, and they're really more to blame. I know people want to look at Chapman. Of course, they're going to remember that at bat in the 8th inning, the same way they remember Altuve hitting a home run off the year before to end the Yankee season. But, can you give them a little more cushion than 1 run? Now, going into this series, I said the Yankee bullpen was good, but not as good as last year, and you'd worried about it a little bit. And it really, came to root in this series. Tampa's bullpen was better than the Yankee bullpen. And, again, players that, you relied on, such as Chad Green, just not as sharp as they were in the past this season. And now let's put the focus on Gary Sanchez behind the plate, which the fact that, they went to Higgy in Game 3 and then Higgy moving forward, really telling tale about what this Yankee front office thinks of Sanchez, and he must be really down on their Christmas list. Because offensively, again, his ceiling should be much higher than Higgy. And I understand his defense isn't that good, and look, in the playoffs, defense is premium, especially like Game 4 when you had Jordan Montgomery, spiking balls into the dirt. You want to make sure someone's going to block that, and you can rely on Higgy more than Sanchez. I get all that. But really, that Game 5, that 8th inning, the fact that they'd rather pinch hit Mike Ford, who again hadn't had a hit since August, over Sanchez in that spot. Now Sanchez did come in the game to play, for defensive purposes, but the fact they wouldn't give Sanchez an at bat there, kind of disrespectful in a way, and maybe some sort of punishment, and maybe there's some stuff going on behind the scenes they're not too happy with. So 2020 is over for the New York Yankees and their fans. Bit of disappointment. Again, now in terms of the actual hurt of this, don't feel the same way as it did year past, maybe because, there's been such a weird exhibition type of season, and we weren't sure we're going to have baseball, and then you get baseball, and you get some playoff action. So, at least get some joy from that, and then you get to a Game 5 and figure, we win this Game 5 and get to the next round and get revenge against Houston and get to the World Series and win a championship. But then those dreams all hit a brick wall once Brousseau hits the home run against Chapman. But the loss doesn't feel as painful as years past, just because maybe, again, because it's been a funky, weird type of season. So at least for me, it wiped off. And now for the New York Yankees, they all go home. Brian Cashman has now, make a decision what he's going to do with this team and stuff like that. As for the show, Section 420 Talkin Yankees, we now enter the offseason.